Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Healthcare Insights powered by RedMed, LBN, and All Ladies League Digital Transformation Chapter. Today's topic is the art of breathing. And we have with us Dr. Sridhar Jagannathan, who lives and works in the Silicon Valley. He is an alumni of the prestigious Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur, with his doctorate from the University of California, Berkeley, his Sloan Masters from the Graduate School of Business, Stanford University. His first book, titled Internet Commerce, Metrics and Models, was published by Prentice Hall in 2001. His recent book, The Cyber Mafia, weaves a compelling story of two heroes fighting digital crime in the dark alleys of the internet. In his spare time, Dr. Sridhar teaches and mentors entrepreneurs in nonprofit organizations. Dr. Sridhar is a global citizen who enjoys traveling and absorbing the rich, complex hues of world cultures. So today's topic, the art of breathing, is very interesting. And when I shared the flyer itself, there were a lot of people who said that they will definitely join. They will eventually join. Thanks for the participants who are already in this webinar. And before I hand over the floor to Dr. Sridhar, the question answer session will take place after the intro and whenever Dr. Sridhar asks. So that is why I've muted everybody. The questions can be put in the chat box as we usually do. So over to you, Dr. Sridhar. The floor is all yours.
Thanks, Pegu, and please call me Sri. I look forward to the session, and thank you all for joining. And what I speak of is something that is relevant to all of us. So hopefully it'll be a good discussion, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. First of all, a disclaimer. This is not medical advice, and certainly this is not a class. And so what I would encourage you to do is to listen with an open mind and take from it what you will. So I'm not saying this is right, true, good for you, etc. I'm saying here's what I have understood, what I've learned, what I've practiced, and I offer it to you, and feel free to judge it on your own terms. Now, India has a very rich wisdom tradition. From ancient times, for thousands of years, knowledge has been composed, packed, and presented in so many different ways. And this we see in the form of Dharma Shastras and Natya Shastras and Yoga Shastras and things like that, in the rich compendium of mythology and other things. And in the tradition that we have in India, what has often happened is that knowledge has become embedded in many of these ways of representing life and spirituality and religion, etc., etc. As a consequence, as we in the modern age look at our traditions, it's often not clear where the wisdom is buried. And like you, many of I've also found facets of it appearing suddenly, and suddenly it reveals to us that maybe there are these hidden jewels of Indian tradition that we have failed to understand and appreciate in the modern age, and that the layers of colonialism, industrialization, our own ambitions and inclinations towards life has masked the richness of what has already been done. And therefore, we do ourselves a disservice when we don't appreciate what is there. This is not to say that everything that is there is automatically wise, automatically knowledge, and automatically applicable. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there are facets there. For instance, we know that in the Vedas, there's a lot of mathematics. There is the formulation of the Pythagoras for triangle, the representations of pi, and so on. So, and obviously a lot of astronomy and other facets. Just like that, because of the nature of our traditions and because it had to be passed on orally, because we did not invent paper for a long time, we often have things which have been interposed with other materials, which look spiritual, which look religious, but often simply mathematics or logic and so on. So this is one such exploration. So I'm going to lead you down a path, and as I said, feel free to interpret it. Now, before we dive in, I want to give you a sense for how to understand such things. At the bottom, I want you to visualize a triangle. The bottom layer of the triangle is content. This content before used to be books and anecdotes and other things like that. And nowadays it's mostly the internet. And we have huge amount of content that flows through this new method of transmitting content. Above that content layer, imagine that there's an information layer. In this information layer, you as a consumer of content have an opportunity to look at content and say, this is something potentially useful which can inform me in my life. So, and this you will do it with just your discretion, looking out for external biases, because today content is very biased. There is a lot of corrupted, manipulated, good, bad, and ugly stuff. And sometimes, it's kind of like digital sewage. So you have an obligation to look at the externality of content, and you have to watch out for your own internal biases. Just because we come from a particular persuasion doesn't mean what appeals to us from that is right. So watching out for external bias and internal bias, you can then convert content into information. Once you have information, and traditionally information is what was found in books, in classes, etc. The question is, how do you get knowledge? Knowledge is got when you sip using your own mental straw from information to convert it into knowledge. And then it becomes knowledge for you. This is why it's very difficult for people to transmit knowledge directly. Even if they know, it's difficult to make others know unless they pass through a pipe that people convert of their own accord from information to knowledge. And finally, over a period of time, when knowledge is polished by effort, one's own effort, it can become wisdom, right? And over a period of time, a flash of inspired wisdom has certainly produced realization for some people. So this is a construct. There's content, there's information, there is knowledge, there is wisdom, and finally, potentially realization. So I'm presenting you content, all right? So I'm not claiming to be wise. I'm not claiming to be knowledgeable. I'm just saying here is content for your understanding. Now, if you, what attitude should one have? It's difficult to consume knowledge if one is cynical. So if you say, oh, it cannot be true, it's very difficult for things to happen. So if someone says this earth moves around the sun and you say, no, I know that the earth doesn't move, then it's very difficult to make the case for astronomy. So like that, what's typically done is to ask for willing suspension of disbelief. So you say, okay, maybe it is true. I'm not convinced it's true, but maybe it could be true. So I would like you to have that mental construct. As for myself, I see myself as a scientist. And I'm a scientist of my own body and mind. And I have created a hypothesis for breathing. And my body is my experiment. My mind is my principal investigator. And what I believe is I have found a substantial positive outcome from this experiment that I'm sharing with you today. So that's the mental construct. You're hearing from a scientist who's exploring his own body and mind, and I'm sharing the results of that with you. Now, where does all this start? I was in the library in California one day, and I was looking for a book. I came across a book by Kalidasa on Meghadutam. And this name was vaguely familiar to me, so I was very curious. I picked it up, and there was an English translation, but that was only a prose translation. So I looked for the poetic part of it, which is rendered in Sanskrit, and which I did not know. So then I started learning Sanskrit in order to make this journey of learning possible. And then I realized that the meter of this particular Meghadutam, which is as you know, the cloud messenger. Meghadutam is written a particular meter called Chandas is the word for meter in Sanskrit. In fact, it was so important for a long time. The Vedas themselves were referred to as Chandas. Now, the Chandas for this particular Mandakranta, Meghadutam is Mandakranta, and it has a structure somewhat like this: na 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 na. Okay, so this is about 17 or so syllables, and that's how that meter is constructed. So I started getting curious about other meters in Sanskrit, and that led me to this meter called Anustubh Chandah. So I'm now going to share some content. Can everyone see? Nego, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see Dr. Sridhar.
Okay.
We can see.
So Anustubh Chandah is a 32 syllable meter consisting of 4 lines, each line consisting of 8 syllables. And it's attributed to sage Valmiki. And the way the story goes is that a hunter killed a bird, which was, flying with its mate, and he killed the crane bird, and the mate died of sorrow, and he uttered this, which spontaneously came out in this particular meter called the Anustubh Chandah meter. And it is memorable because it's remarkably the most common meter in Sanskrit literature. It's used in the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Vishnu Sahasranam. Almost 90 to 95% of all Itihas literature of Indian origin turns out to be in this meter. And the meter go is the first shloka by sage Valmiki is presented like this: Ma nishada pratishtha tva gamaha sasvitvatihi samaha yat krauncha mitudnan dekam avidah kama mohitam. Right? You will find no risk for the long years of eternity, for you killed a bird in love and unsuspecting. So as I looked into this meter, something struck me. And these were days when I was learning Carnatic music as well. And one day at around 4:30, 5 o'clock, I jumped up and said, this has got to do with breathing. It came to me spontaneously. So I cannot tell you that, I had that notion come up. Meghu, my camera went off. Let me just see why it did that.
Yeah, you can turn it
Can
on.
you spotlight me on the camera?
Yeah, okay.
Or do I have to do something?
You just turn it on.
Okay, I thought it was on.
I think your camera is off.
Oh, okay.
You are spotlighted. Yeah, we can see your thumbnail actually.
Okay, now it's okay. All right.
Yeah.
So, I said earlier at 5 o'clock, Anustubh Chandah has breathing formulas embedded in a shloka. At this point, it was just a hypothesis. An idea just struck me. Is it possible? So what is Anustubh Chandah? It is a simple construct, and I encourage you to tap or hum or whatever you want along with this. It goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, da, dum, dum, da. 1, 2, 3, 4, da, dum, da, dum. 1, 2, 3, 4, da, dum, dum, da. 1, 2, 3, 4, da, dum, da, dum. Now, Anustubh Chandah turns out is a meter class, and it has some 32 some variations, out of which this particular one is a derived one, and sometimes called the shloka meter. So now, with this hypothesis, I said, what about, what if we overlay this on breathing, right? Which is the hypothesis that I have. So there are three ways of breathing. You might know this already. All breathing is obviously you take air in and you breathe carbon dioxide out, etc. But there are three ways in which you can do it. One is to breathe when you're taking breath, your abdomen expands, and when you exhale, your abdomen contracts. That's pattern one. Second pattern is you can breathe with your chest, so you consciously expand your chest, and then the rest of the diaphragm, the abdomen, etc., behave accordingly. And the third one is something called reverse abdominal breathing, where you can suck in while you're suck in your abdomen when you're breathing in, and let it go when you're breathing out. The reverse abdominal breathing happens when you suddenly catch your breath, when you're surprised, and you'll see suddenly you see something, you'll see and your abdomen will go in when you're breathing in air. It is an important technique in breathing. It's particularly the Chinese have referred to it as being very significant. And of course, we have many huge traditions of breathing that we are not going to explore. In any case, in the way I've illustrated this, it's the first one, which is you take air in, you let your abdomen expand, and you reverse it on the cycle. So of the 8 steps, so I would just want you to follow with me. As I say, 1, 2, 3, 4, you just let you breathe naturally. 1, breathing comes in, the diaphragm contracts, the rib cage rises, the lungs expand, the pressure falls in the lungs, air enters the lungs, the diaphragm descends, the abdomen expands. This is the intake cycle. And the reverse is you start breathing out, the diaphragm relaxes, the rib cage falls, the lungs contract, the pressure rises in the lungs, air exits, and gradually the abdomen contracts. Okay. So this is our natural breathing cycle. This happens all the time, right? There's nothing unique about this. What is remarkable is, however, the fact that of all things we do in life, there is probably nothing more significant than breathing. Arguably, if we don't breathe, we are dead. Now, funnily enough, no one actually teaches us breathing. So the question arises, do we know how to breathe? And it seems like a ridiculous question. But let me give you a thought experiment. Let's say you went and bought a new car with manual transmission, and you take possession and you drive along for 5 years, and one day you go back to the showroom and the guy says, how do you like the car? And he says, oh, not bad, I've been using gears 1 and 2. And he says, what about 3 and 4? And you say, oh, I didn't know they existed, right? So breathing is somewhat like that. It turns out that most of us in some ways don't know how to breathe. Now, the question I asked is, what if we overlay the shloka pattern of Anustubh Chandah and start breathing like that? Now, what did I lose? I think I've lost some context before I jump to that part of it. Now, just breathe normally. Okay, don't do anything special. So, and just count with me. 1, 2, and you don't count. I'll count. You just breathe and breathe in and breathe out. So on 1, you start breathing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now you'll find that most of us breathe like this most of the time. Our inhalation cycles are like this, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then our exhalation cycle is 5, 6, 7, 8. What we are not doing is breathing deep. We autonomically breathe 12 to 20 times a minute. And obviously, if we start exercising, it starts deepening. But deep breathing is so important for our body. It increases oxygenation, it produces relaxation and stress reduction, and starts building the muscles associated with breathing. And it's so important since we are all living longer and we are leading more and more stressful lives, that we know how to breathe properly. So now I'm going to ask you to breathe with me on this count level, right? As I say 1 up to 8, I want you to inhale and then exhale when I start 1 again. So I don't want you to say 1, 2, 3, 4. I just want you to inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fair enough? I hope all of you have been breathing. Don't stop breathing on my account for sure. So now, what we have done here is to produce a breathing cycle which is based on a pattern. And that pattern is this Shloka meter or Anustubh Chandah. And we are breathing in now on an 8-count cycle. So I want you to keep in mind, think of it as divided into 4 quarters. Each quarter has 4 numbers. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is quarter 1. Think of that as your first gear. 5, 6, 7, 8 is your second quarter. That is your second gear. And first and second gear are your inhalation sequences. Then 1, 2, 3, 4 is your third gear coming down, exhalation. And then 5, 6, 7, 8 is the final quarter, exhalation again. All right. So 8 count going up, 8 count going down. All good? Hopefully you're following all of this. Let me pause for a minute. Come back to Zoom. Stop sharing for a minute. And Meghu, let's see whether there's anyone who's got an acute question that they're not sure what the heck I'm doing.
Yeah. Participants, you can type your questions into the chat box. You have any questions here? Are we clear about the breathing cycles which doctor was talking about? The 1, 2, 3, 4 and the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, both the cycles. Any questions, you can put it in the chat box. Are we clear here? Probably a few of you can reply. Is it clear, everybody? Can we go on?
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Let me just continue then.
Somebody wants you to chant aloud the Anustubh Chandah.
Oh, yeah, sure. So we are going to do a lot of chanting in Anustubh Chandah. So just bear with me. Okay. Anustubh Chandah is itself a meter only. So it's like I said, you can say na 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 na. So you can say it like that. That is Anustubh Chandah, at least as a shloka meter. Okay, just like I explained Manda Kranta, right? But we're going to chant in that shloka meter, all of us, shortly. So just bear with me. All right, as I go to the next part of what I wanted to say.
Mr. Manohar, you have a question. You have raised your hand. So if you have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask that question. Okay. Okay, doctor, you can go on.
Okay. Meghu, just call me Sri.
Sure.
Sorry, that was my mistake. Yeah, please carry on. It's quite interesting. Sorry
okay,
for the...
Okay, no problem, no problem.
All right. So now I'm going to drift a little bit and all right, now that you got the basic understanding of what I'm trying to do, let's get into, this is a typical shloka, and you all have, I'm sure, heard thousands of these things. And what we are going to do is to demonstrate something new and unique. So far what I've said is, here is Anustubh Chandah. This is how it feels. and it looks like you can apply it to breathing, right? But now I'm making one huge leap. I'm saying that maybe the people who did this, who decided to utilize Anustubh Chandah or the Shloka meter for Mahabharata and Ramayana and so on, this we are talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of verses, like almost 90 plus 90, 95% of all literature in our tradition is done in this particular meter. So I was curious, why did they do that? And my feeling was, well, maybe what they wanted was, well, they, somewhat euphemistically, but let us say there's a standard developed that if you did it this particular way, and remembering that we were a very oral, tradition, right, where things transmitted by sound, that maybe they imagined that people would have a favorite shloka of their own, and they would chant or imagine that shloka, and maybe they were encouraging them to practice that shloka mentally while breathing properly. So that's the second thrust of the hypothesis. So what if you have shloka and Anustubh Chandah and you add breathing to that shloka, right? That's the key construct here. So I'm going to illustrate it in a few ways, right? And once again, this is very secular. The idea is not to say Hinduism was great or anything like that. All I'm saying here is there are phrases which are occurring here which have that 8-beat cycle. And I'm going to show, a variety of such things. And it can entirely be, by numbers, like you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can do it in, I have constructed one English shloka, for instance. It's not religion. It is just a matter of, practice. Okay. So just bear with me. While I might say Narayana, I'm not saying, you bow down to Vishnu or anything like that. I'm just using it as the natural construct of aksharas which fall into this pattern. Okay. So if you'll see the shloka at the top, Narayana, 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 Narayana. Okay. So I'm saying this is Anustubh Chandah, which it is. I'm saying this you now incorporate into your breathing. But remember, the most important part is you should not say anything aloud, or you should not say it. If you say it, your breathing pattern is interrupted because your air will now come out of the mouth and you want to avoid that. So the only thing you have to do is to mentally say Narayana along the way I've written it and follow the pattern that you already know, right? So here we go. So I'm going to say it. You can imagine it, but please don't say it, okay? So on the first 8, you're going to go up. As we said, 8 counts, inhalation. The next 8 counts, exhalation. The next 8 counts, inhalation. The next 8 counts, exhalation. So when I start with Na, I want you to start inhaling as if it's the count of 1, right? So here we go. Narayana, 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 right? So same thing you can do with Ramayana. Now, what happens in this method? So to graphically show what's happening to your body concurrently, you start at the vertical axis is inhalation and exhalation. So in this diagram, the counts are going to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the inhalation for the first 8 counts happens. First it is soft, then it is deep, then it is soft relaxation, and then the forced contraction of abdomen. So let's do Narayana again. And here you emphasize, in particular, I would urge you to emphasize Raya at the top. And you see this bump at the bottom. At the bottom, Narayana, Narayana, and where you force the abdominal contraction. So I'll just say the shloka, you just breathe. Ready? Narayana, 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 Narayana. That's one cycle, right? So we had 16 counts. Everyone good? All right. let's do this with an arbitrary English shloka that I created for this. All right, the shloka is breathe in gently, breathe in strong, breathe out gently, and force air out. So the notion of breathe in strong is you're expanding as much you're taking in as much air as possible and expanding your chest out, your abdomen is fully inflated, etc. And force air out is the forced abdominal contraction, right, where you're pushing it out. The problem with breathing poorly is that what we are doing is we are not nourishing our lungs. And as a consequence, most of these lung cells are not doing their job. And when we do need it, when we are in a rush, we are climbing stairs, or during times of COVID, etc., it's where the lung function is what eventually gets us. So the idea here is if you persist in breathing deep, your lung function and all associated parts of your body will be stronger. All right, so let's do this shloka. Ready? Breathe in gently, breathe in strong, breathe out gently and force air out. Breathe in gently, breathe in strong, breathe out gently and force air out. Right? This is an English shloka for breathing. All right, let's look at the more common things that many of us might be familiar with. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarva Karyeshu Sarvada. Now, you all have probably heard this 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times. Let's actually do it. Ready? This is 32 cycles. So I'm going to move the slide as we end the second line. Okay. Ready? Go. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarva Karyeshu Sarvada. One more time. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarva Karyeshu Sarvada. I hope all of you are only breathing and you're not speaking or saying the shloka. Your shloka should be in your mind, not in your mouth. All right? So keep your mouth closed, breathe the shloka. Okay? Let's come to the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. First stanza. Same thing. Ready? Start breathing. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamakaha pandavaschaiva kim kurvata Sanjaya. Obviously, the blind king Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjaya what the heck is going on at the battlefield, right? So this is the construct of how most of these shlokas, and as you have this pattern in mind, you'll suddenly see that, oh my gosh, it's all falling into place, and you hear something and it starts resonating. So that is the beauty of this construct. In fact, I've now been practicing this for about 5 years. I must say that I consciously breathe now with this kind of structure, maybe 20-25% of the time. It's there in my mind all the time. And occasionally I may put a Vishnu Sahasranamam and I walk to that sequence, right? And I can actually feel the pulsation of the beat, and it forces my breathing to a certain regularity. So much so that I feel qualitatively that my breathing has become extended, my breathing has become softer. So feel free to try it out and see whether these things happen for you. So now we are going to, I'm going to pause again before I switch gears again. So let me see how to do that. Okay, Meghu, let's see whether there are any questions. Someone wanted to hear Anustubh Chandah chanted. Well, they've now got it.
Yeah, someone
is everyone
wanted,
good?
Yeah. Any questions, participants? Please feel free to type in the chat box.
No, Anustubh Chandah is not Mandakranta. Anustubh Chandah is a different meter than Mandakranta. As I said, Anustubh Chandah, at least a shloka meter can be rendered as na 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 nan nan na 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 nan na nan. Whereas Manda Kranta is na 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 na. That's that meter construct. Hold on for a minute.
Yeah.
Since that question was asked, I wanted to chant the first shloka from Meghadutam, so that you get a sense for how Manda Kanta is said. Kaschit Kanta Viraha Guruna Swadikara Pramattaha Shape Nastang Gamita Mahima Varshabogena Vartuhu Yakshas Chakre Janakatanaya Sthana Punyo Dakeshu Stikdichaya Tarusha Vasatim Ramagiryo Shrameshu. So you can see it's very different than Anustubh Chandah. All right. Any other questions before we move on?
How many seconds will the count of 8 take? Somebody is asking.
No, it's up to you. It's absolutely up to you. And what I would suggest is you experiment and make it as slow as possible. What our rishis have said is, don't rush the breathing. It has to be very slow. It has to be very gentle. And then you'll get the maximum benefit. So slow down your breathing is what people suggest in general. So you change it. I have a recorder where I can change the audio speed. So I often slow it down so that I can try various cycles in terms of speed. So that thing went quickly. I couldn't read the chat.
I will read it out to you. So.
No, I got that. Anustubh Chandah, 26 Sanskrit meters. Well, there are more than 26. There are, I have heard of thousands. There's talk of 600 some meters. Certainly in the current era, it is tangibly fewer, but we have far more than 26. But I'm not saying all meters are breathing meters. I'm actually pointing out that maybe Anustubh Chandah is the only breathing meter, and that is why it is so prevalent. It's a hypothesis. But in a way, my hypothesis does not matter. I want you to separate the question of why it is so. Why has Indian, let's say, heritage, Sanskrit heritage, adopted Anustubh Chandah? Why did all the poets mostly write in this? Why did Valmiki compose it almost entirely in Anustubh Chandah, etc.? That's an interesting question. I have a hypothesis that they said, oh yeah, you can, many of you will know only 1 or 2 shlokas, so you can just keep it in your mind and breathe normally or breathe efficiently. Is a hypothesis, but in a way it does not matter. What I'm urging you is be a scientist of yourself and explore it, see if it works for you, and if it does, great. Doesn't matter what Valmiki did, right? And that's how I approach it. I find it has tremendously benefited me personally, and I recommend it to you to try. All right. Any other questions?
Is there a definitive verse describing Anushtubh Chandra, Anushtubh anywhere in the Shastras?
Yeah, there is actually a detailed definition. In fact, as I said, Anustubh Chandah has a platform. You can have variations out of this 16 Akshara construct. The rules for Anushtubh are specific, that there is no regulation on the first 4 Aksharas. There is regulation on the first line. There is regulation on the second 4 Aksharas of the first line. There is no regulation on the first 4 Aksharas of the second line. And then there is a regulation of the last 4 Aksharas of the second line. So that's how it's constructed. And there are a bunch of variants that, you can certainly find more information on. So, and I'm sure there are people, and I see people sharing websites and content. So I'm sure there are people more knowledgeable than I am. So feel free to share and learn more from each other. I'm going to jump back so that we don't lose, time. So I'm going to continue back to my slides. Now, all right. So you might say all this is very interesting, but how important is it? Well, it turns out it's actually very important. And depending on how you look at some of our traditions, there's a huge amount of subtle wisdom that is embedded in our heritage. And one of the things they talk about is that there are these three aspects of our body that we need to understand. So one is called the physical body, stula, our stula kosha, or the physical body. And second is as a class. So it is stula, which is gross, sukshma, which is subtle, and karana, which is causal. Right? That there are these three koshas or sheets around, and in the stula aspect of it, you have what is called the food sheet or the annamaya kosha, right? Now, covering that is what they call the sukshma, and the sukshma covers the breathing, pranayama, manomaya kosha, which is the mind, and vijnanamaya kosha, which is the intellectual sheet. And then finally, there is the most subtle of them all, which is the karana or the causal body, which is the one associated with anandamaya or happiness. Now, why are these important? Are these really true? There is actually a fair amount of recent research on this matter. There's a general nuance associated with consciousness, about functions during sleep, what happens to the brain, and so on. And so this is a matter of deep thinking. This has been a matter of thinking for thousands of years in Buddhist and Hindu traditions. So this is not something that is coming out of thin air. So it is remarkably true that in particular, Buddhists and Hindus have been thinking about this for a really long time. And same is true to a more limited degree in the Chinese tradition, that this notion of breathing is intimately connected to the rest of our body, not just the physical gross body, but all the way into what it does to our inner functions. So we'll talk about this a little bit more. Let me jump to. Now, this thing with chakras is that you have to look at it in a bigger picture. So if you look at the chakra structure, there are these Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddhi, Ajna, and Sastras chakra. These can also be mapped, as sometimes they are, in terms of Sarigama-pa. Right? So I want, let's just do that once. I don't want to emphasize it too much. So just to put that in your mind, I'm going to articulate the notion that you can aspirate, breathe the basic swaras through your body, as if you're impacting your chakras. And that is also a reasonable way to think about breathing. So as I say, Sarigama, Padanisa, upper sa, and then I'll start with upper sa and come back to smaller sa. In particular, I want you to focus that I'm going to pause on ma and then pick up again on pa. So ma is the end of the first quarter, 1, 2, 3, 4. Pa is the beginning of the second quarter. Then I'll come back on the exhalation, pause on pa again, and start on Ma for the final four. Ready? Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, ni, sa. So now, I hope you gave particular emphasis to, when I say each one of these, your mind should be at that point in your body. And this is the whole thing about the body-mind connection, which is so integral to the way we think about a lot of our internal processes. So I'm going to do it once again. So I want you to trace, as I say Sarigama Padanisa, I want you to imagine that your breath is in that location and it's traveling up the spine. When I say knee, it's at the Sahasrara Chakra, which is at the top of your head. And the upper Sa is actually above your head. And then we start there again. From there, it goes to the top of your head. Da is the third eye, the Shiva's eye. Pa is in your throat. Ma is in your chest. Then Manipura, Swadhisthana and Mooladhara. Ready? So I'm going to do it again. But this time I want you to imagine, visualize your breath traveling up your spine. Ready? Sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, ri, sa. All right. Hope that was useful. Now, what is prana?
Sridhar, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to check if you had enough battery to last the session.
Who, me?
Yeah, the iPad battery.
Oh,
charge.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll plug it in.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
Oh, no worries. Thank you. All right. Now, when we say prana, it is actually very important for us to understand what this prana is. And okay, so by prana, actually, what is described in our literature is that it's a life force. It's not just oxygen. Unfortunately, Western traditions have brought us down to, you breathe, you're breathing in air, it has got oxygen, and it's consumed, and carbon dioxide comes out. Unfortunately, that is a way too simplistic understanding of what is actually happening. In a very subtle and fundamental way, there is an energy transference which goes on between the outside world and the inner world. And as we appreciate that transference of energy, you'll find that you can actually activate, energize, and feel the various aspects of your own body. Okay, and this is very, very true in the Chinese tradition. They call it, I practice Qigong there, and the Qi is that energy that they believe it manifests itself from the outside world into the body, which you release out again. Now, Chinese practices have evolved for somewhat independently for a few thousand years, and they are remarkably aligned to the ways we think in terms of what does it do internally. We describe it differently, but there is enough validation of this system of knowledge. So what we say pranayama is, I call it the regulation of breath rather than control. Some people call it control. I think it's less about control and the fact that you're operating your vehicle properly. It's taking the right amount of fuel. You're using the right gears, and it's doing what it's supposed to do for your body. The way it's described is prana is separable into these 5, and some of you might know the shlokas, but basically prana is the reception, focused at the eyes and the ears. Udana is the rising breath. Dhyana is the circulation breath that allows the breath to go around the body. Samana is the digestive breath, and Apana is the excretory breath. So in this function, what they are asking you to do is to imagine what does breath do for you. And as you visualize breath, you will find that you can actually breathe into your body. You can breathe into your lungs. You can breathe into your toes. And this process of breathing into your body and knowing where you're breathing it is remarkably effective. We don't have time in this session, but I would strongly urge you to look into yoga nidra. Yoga nidra, often done in the shavasana mode, is a remarkably wonderful way of doing the mind-body connection, and it has fundamental benefits that are quite unimaginable. So I would urge you to look at understanding pranayama in a deeper context. So, but we won't spend much time on this. I just wanted to illustrate it and move on. So I'm going to continue on. So with this in mind, so this diagram, oops. Am I sharing properly, Meghu? Yeah?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So this Ashtanga Yoga's diagram is well known, but I think it is not well appreciated. And it's, we all say, when we say yoga, we jump into, oh yeah, asana, and I can do the warrior pose and things like that. I think the important aspect of this 8 limbs of yoga is not so much the construct, but the utilization. Each one of these layers has got a very important connection to the layer below. And if you, let's say, look at pranayama, which is where our focus is today, when you do the kind of breathing that I'm talking about, as I practice my asanas, when I regulate my breathing the way I'm imagining it, as I said, Vakratunda, Mahakaya, or Narayana, whatever pattern I do, I find my asanas come out much easier. The reason is, in asanas, you are not trying to control your body using your muscles. Your focus is on adopting a shape and letting your breathing move your body into posture. So you never pull yourself into a posture, you let the breath move you into the posture. So you will find practitioners of yoga, that many of you might be, that try this breathing pattern out and see what it does for you. You might find that the body starts relaxing into that, deeper into the stretch. Now, I mentioned briefly Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is a process of attaching the mind to the body and then detaching it. Pratyahara is a very important aspect of, spiritual liberation, but it is equally effective to achieve physical liberation. So, if you practice pratyahara in the yoga nidra sense versus pratyahara in the sense of detachment from, let's say, wealth and family and so on, you'll find that you have a new relationship to your body, that your mind is the controller, that your body is an instrument, and the mind can control the body. So I strongly urge you to look at yoga nidra practice and have that approach to pratyahara. And that makes other things possible. So now we come to the Gayatri Mantra itself. And this obviously is, it's the most important, etc., etc. I'm not focusing on the spiritual aspect of it. I'm just going to focus on how this mantra is easily usable on a daily basis. Now, the original Gayatri Mantra occurs in the Rig Veda, and it is a 24 Akshara shloka. But someone somewhere has made this into a 32 cycle. And they basically did it by adding the first line, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha. So I'm going to, and now you're all experts at this. And obviously, this is a very neutral saying. I mean, there's no specific deity or anything. It just says, I meditate upon the radiant divine light of spiritual consciousness and hope it does something for me internally, right? So we're just going to say it. I'm going to say it. I just want you to breathe it, okay? And we're going to do just what we did before. So ready? Go. Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tatsavitur Parenyam Vargo devasya dhimahi Diyo Yonah Prachodayat. Once again, Om Bhur Bhuva Swaha Tatsvitur Varenyam Vargo Devasya Dhimahi Diyo Yonah Prachodayat. Now, if you do this, and I encourage you to kind of do it while you're lying down, do it when you're sitting. You can be watching TV and practice it. You can be taking a walk and you can practice it. And you'll feel this kind of butterfly effect that things are just coming in so smoothly and going out so smoothly. I just named it as butterfly breathing. So it's certainly up to your imagination as to how this performs. But what I found was, let's say that this thought resonates with you, that this notion of spiritual consciousness, etc., etc. The nice thing about this kind of approach is you can meditate upon the radiant divine light, etc., etc. It's going on in the background, but in the foreground, your body is actually resonating to the Anustubh Chandah Meter, the Shloka meter, and you are getting invigorated. So, some of you know in the tradition of Upanayanam, etc. This is the secret mantra they tell you. Hey, this is you should be saying this, so many times a day. And as a rebellious kid, I would say, what nonsense? Why should I keep saying something that I don't understand? Now, to an extent, it has more meaning for me. Even if it is not spiritual, I can see why one should utilize it as a tool to make breathing to be more sustained and impactful. Now, that is the Gayatri Mantra in short form. But let me give you the long form. In the long form, what they have done is they have added two rest parts. One is called the Antara Kumbhaka, which is retention of breath. And then there's a Bahya Kumbhaka, which is retention of breath while your lungs are empty. All right. So typically these are done, I would argue, to strengthen the lungs for people, possibly because they had to do chanting of Vedas or something like that. I'm not exactly sure, but the ratios of how much of holding to do, how much of exhalation and inhalation to do seems variable, and different authorities seem to say different things, and maybe it has got different functions depending on why it is important. For some people, retaining breath while full might be important. Let's say you're a diver or something, and versus other people retaining it while you're almost empty of air in the lungs might be important because you're a singer and you want to be able to hit the high notes or something. So in any case, it's a method. So in the long form of the Gayatri Mantra, it is Om Bhuhu, Om Bhuvaha, Om Swaha, Om Mahaha, Om Janaha, Om Tapaha, Om Satyam, Om Tatsavitur Varenyam, Vargo Devasya Dhimahi, Diyo Yonah Prachodayat, Om Apo Jyoti, Rasom Pratam Brahma, Bhur Bhavaswaram. Okay. All right. In this longer form, there are obviously inhalation, inner hold, exhalation, and outer hold. And I've called this wave breathing just because I felt like it, but you can call it what you wish. And what I've got is the way I heard it long time back is how I put it. Okay, in terms of how much time for holding it when I was 12 years old or something. But there are other people who have done it differently. So we are going to chant the way I've got it here, and I just want you to chant with me. Ready? No, rather, don't chant with me, just breathe with me. So remember, first two lines are inhalation, then next two lines are lines 3 and 4 are hold the breath. Don't let go of the breath. Then exhalation is 8 aksharas, line 5. Then external hold is line 6 and 7. All right, total of 56 aksharas, 8 times 7. So I'm going to say the mantra. I just want you to breathe. Ready? Om Bhuhu, Om Bhuvaha, Om Swaha, Om Mahaha, Om Janaha, Om Tapaha, Om Satyam, Om Tatsavitur Varenyam, Vargo Devasya Dhimahi, Yo Yona Prachodayat, Om Apo Jyoti, Rasam Amrito Brahma, Bhurtuvasvarom. Now that might have been a bit complicated. I'm going to do it again. I'll do it a little bit slower. And I'll also say hold, exhale, things like that as a marker. All right. Inhale. Om Bhuhu, Om Bhuvaha, Om Swaha, Om Maha, Om Janaha, Om Tapaga, Om Satyam. Hold. Om Tatsavta Varenyam, Vargo Devasya Dhimahi. Exhale. Yo Yona Prachodayat. Hold. Om Apo Jyoti, Rasav Amritam Brahma, Bhurtuvasvarom. So that is the full cycle, and it looks like that. 16 aksharas of take air in, 16 aksharas of hold air in, 8 aksharas of push air out, and 16 aksharas of resist the incoming air. Okay, let's see whether there are any questions. All right, any questions?
Yeah, I think Vidya, you want to ask a question? Okay.
Sir, good evening, sir. Sir, it's extremely excellent, sir, the presentation. I just have a doubt regarding, so when we chant the shloka, does this breathing automatically happen, or should we take any particular extra effort to focus on the breathing, what you're talking about, or how should we approach it?
I'm saying don't chant. I'm saying
Don't chant.
mentally. Yeah, don't chant. I'm saying mentally imagine the shloka. Breathe, don't chant.
Wow. Okay. And what is external hold, sir, then means? What is external hold? What does external hold means in terms of the breathing, what you had just told for the last 2 lines?
You're not breathing. You're not breathing yet. You've exhaled all the air. There's no air in your body, but don't breathe. That's the external kumbhaka. Right?
Okay, so as a practice, you're asking us to do this, imagine the chant and just breathe as per your, whatever you've told us.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just saying don't breathe, because if you breathe, then the whole thing will break down. You just if you choose any shloka that you want, that you like.
Yeah, yeah.
And let it run like a recorded thing again and again in the background of your mind. And you breathe against that shloka pattern in this rhythm.
Oh, okay. Fantastic. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for that clarification. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Otherwise, we are going to go to summary.
JS has a question. Yeah, JS.
Thank you, sir. It has been a very, very interesting learning for us. Two questions. In fact, I don't know whether I can pose both of them. One minor question is there any link with this meter to the Adi Tala of our Carnatic music, which is a very minor question. I'm just asking out of curiosity. Second question is, I've read and heard Gay Hendricks on the art of centering and breathing, where I think I remember to have read that there are 24,000 breath cycles we take per day. And the scientists seem to have measured 76,000 thoughts which occur per day for a human being, which appears to be a multiple of 24,000 into 72,000. So is there any link here? I'm sorry if it is out of syllabus, we can ignore the question. Otherwise, I would like to have your thoughts.
Every question is a valid question. Every answer might not be a valid answer. So I think there are natural rhythms, and I feel that Adi Talam is a natural rhythm to this kind of construct of breathe on an 8 count. Okay, there are other breathing counts. Okay, it is not the only one. It just feels natural to me. There is a certain, and I like the fact that particularly while an 8 count cycle might be available elsewhere, the fact is even in Adi Talam there's an emphasis on the beating cycle. So just like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? I've emphasized that as part of the shloka meter, where I'm saying you really expand your chest. That's your opportunity to expand your chest. right? And then on the 1, 2, 3, on the exhalation cycle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is the first time you have an abdominal contraction. And what I found was I could not continue the contraction, and I needed that pause. That first contraction is at 6, and then I need a tiny pause at 7, and then I contract again at 8 to get the full exhalation. So it seemed to me that there is this natural human body cycle of some kind which allows us to do this. The 6, 7, 8 in inhalation, you can there is no constraint. 6 and 7 actually flow very smoothly in inhalation, but 6 and 7 do not go well in exhalation. So there seems to be a pause, which is you get the ridge, at the bottom. So, but you're right. The construct with Aditala, it makes perfect sense. The second part of the question, I have no idea. Yes, we breathe about 24,000 times, but whether there are 24,000, 72,000 thoughts, I have no idea. I hope there are not that many thoughts. I think we should all control our thoughts. So.
Actually, the question came from the multiple of 3, like you have in cycle, hold cycle, and out cycle. I thought maybe this equivalent to this many thoughts which are coming up, because nothing is proven. Everything is, we have hypothesis to reason out what our forefathers have found and recorded. Thank you very much for the
wonderful.
Very nice session.
And feel free to experiment. And nothing I've said here is rigid. As I said, be the scientist, observe your body, and you'll make discoveries every day.
Thank you.
Someone asked me, okay, are you following your doctor's advice? I said, no. I listen to the doctor very carefully, and I follow my own advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can practice this anytime. I practice it when I'm awake. I find I fall into that practice quite naturally. Initially, I would say, okay, I haven't done this, but after some time, it feels very natural to me. It just comes. I find I'm breathing on an 8-count cycle like this. All right. Meghu, if there are no other questions, I'm going to summarize.
There are some comments here. So
okay, quickly.
There is Smita Sangvi who wants you to demonstrate it. So
demonstrate
please demonstrate it for us.
Demonstrate what? That's what we've been doing.
Smita, do you want to ask that question?
What am I demonstrating, Smita?
Okay, I think Mr. Nagaraj has raised his question.
No, Smita, ask your question. I didn't understand what your question is.
Hello.
Yeah,
I think Mr. Nagaraj wants to ask Smita. Smita, Mr. Nagaraj, please go ahead.
I'm audible?
Yes.
Okay. See, you said that when we breathe, we don't chant, okay? But then, supposing we are practicing some music, so how do we do it? Because when we practice the music, we are actually chanting also in a way, isn't it? So there it can be done with.
I'm not saying don't chant. Chant, sing, do all those things. I'm just saying if you want to focus on this breathing pattern, then you have to not, your mouth has to be closed, right? So don't chant when you breathe, but please breathe when you chant.
Okay. So then this is one way when the old musicians like Tyagaraja, etc., they attend moksha, you can say.
What was the question on Tyagaraja?
No. See, Tyagaraja was a great man who attained moksha, okay, isn't it? He was a great singer also. And then did he have this type of knowledge that this breathing and it's going through all the chakras, they are all...
not for me to say what Tyagaraja went through, okay. I have no idea. Obviously, illustrious genius. So I don't know. I'm at a much lower level. I just found something curious. I'm offering it to you. I don't have insights, about Tyagaraja.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, this breathing. How long we have to continue? As long as we like.
as long as you want, whenever you want it.
Okay.
I mean, there's nothing particularly complex. Don't strain yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do it lying down. I often, when I go to bed, I follow this nice breathing cycle. It's very slow and relaxing.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir. That answers Gargi Advaiti's question also. So you recommend we practice this anytime, not necessarily only when we sit in a Padmasana. So I think that.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. As long as you breathe, you might as well breathe right. And what I'm asking you to explore is whether this is a good thing for you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Meghu, I've got to wind up and unfortunately I have to rush. Okay.
Sure.
So I'm going to jump back into a slide and then from that I'll be saying bye. Okay.
Sure, Sri.
All right. So I just wanted to summarize. So as I'm saying, go mental with shloka and keep for this method, keep your mouth closed. Imagine some shloka. It can be as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In that model, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. English shloka, breathe in gently, breathe in strong, breathe out gently, and force air out. Narayana, 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 Narayana. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarva Karyeshu Sarvada. Dharmachetre Kuruchetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kim Kurvata Sanjaya. So you can essentially peloton to shlokas on YouTube if you want. Search for Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana, Vishnu Sahasranamam. It's amazing how many of these are all Anustubh Chandah in this meter. Listen to it and change speed. When you're walking, you can try it out. You can say it mentally, and you'll find that your body starts to get into gear. This breathing method is secular. It's not based on Hinduism, although we have used some examples from Hindu shlokas. All these wisdom traditions, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, etc., have a lot to offer us. So, for instance, I see the namaz that Muslims do. It's a beautiful yoga 5 times a day, and there's no harm in practicing other people's wisdom traditions. Christianity has the 10 commandments. It's a wonderful tradition. So I would say we should learn from various sources. This appears to be one. I practice Qigong, as I mentioned, and Qigong has got some wonderful exercises for the body and the mind, and focusing on the energy from outside and energy into the body. So I'd certainly encourage people to look at things broadly. The underlying platform of the meter provides a systematic method for elongated and emphasized breathing. It requires the mouth to be closed. Do not vocalize. Focus on pattern and emphasis, and the cycle length can be gradually slow. What I have found is it has given me benefits. It has given me focus. And I certainly find that my patterns have improved in terms of breathing. So all of this is based on, my thoughts, research, reflections, experiments, personal experiments. I do this every day. I find it's got some benefit. Feel free to experiment. You might have other propositions and practices. So have your own hypotheses and see what works out. And if you like any of this, feel free to look at my book. I don't know whether it's available in print in India, but you should certainly be able to get the Kindle version. So may you all breathe well and be fulfilled respirationally. We will end with this, and you can all vocalize. Don't need to breathe this. So I think everyone, Megho, if we can unmute everyone, we can all sing this. Okay?
Yeah, 1 minute. Yeah, I've done that.
Sarvesham
Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantirabhavatu Sarvesham Purnabhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu.
All right. Thank you all for your time. Thank you all for your patience. I hope you found something of this to be of use and of interest. All right. So, Nego, I'm going to sign off.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining in. Thanks for joining in, everybody.
Thank you.
See you all next Saturday for another Healthcare Insight session. Next.
Thank you all.
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you.